I walked into a 2M consulting practice where 11 people were waiting on one person before they could move forward on anything. That person was the owner, and he thought that meant he was indispensable. Everything ran through him. Every scope adjustment, every deliverable that needed sign-off before it went to a client, every question from his team about how to handle an edge case, every internal escalation that didn't have a documented answer. It all circled back to him before the business could act. From the inside, that felt like being central to the operation, which is a reasonable thing to feel when you built the operation from scratch, and the quality is better when you're involved. From the outside, it was a business that could only move as fast as one person could clear their queue, and that person was already at capacity before lunch. That pattern is one of the most common structural problems I see across service businesses at its revenue level, and it's hard to diagnose because it reads as evidence that the owner's judgment is sound, and that the team defers to them because they're worth deferring to. Everything they take as proof they're doing a good job is also the thing keeping the business from growing past a certain size. The cost distributes across the year. In proposals that weren't as sharp because the owner had already spent 6 hours fielding team questions before sitting down to write them. In deals that stalled because there was never enough capacity left to follow up the way the opportunity deserved. Each instance is small. Added up across 12 months, it's the reason the business feels like it's running at full effort and still not pulling away from where it was the year before. In nearly every service business that grows through relationships, this pattern develops gradually. One extra responsibility absorbed here, one more judgment call that only the owner can make there, until it has been the operating reality for years without anyone naming it. The business has grown around the owner's availability. Their judgment became the infrastructure, and removing themselves from any part of it feels risky because the few times they've tried, something slipped, which reinforced the belief that their direct involvement is what's holding the standard together. Their involvement is holding the standard together because the standard has never been built into the systems. It lives in the owner's head, gets expressed through their presence, and disappears the moment they step back. Pulling yourself out of the system before building something to carry your role in it just leaves gaps where your judgment used to be. Most owners have tried this once, watched something slip, and concluded that stepping back doesn't work. The actual problem was that the infrastructure to support the step back was never built. The shift I work to build with clients is what I call the AI manager, the owner positioned as the architect of the system, with their expertise built into the infrastructure so the business runs on their standard whether they're in the room or not. Their thinking is still in the room. It's built into the walls. The output of that shift is what I call the value zone, the place where the owner's expertise meets the work only they can do at the standard the business was built on. An hour there compounds. An hour spent approving a deliverable a quality standard would have cleared, or fielding a question a documented process would have answered. That hour goes somewhere else. Those hours add up, and across a week they account for most of what the owner is actually doing. The owner who's still inside the system spends most of their day on exactly those tasks. The AI manager built the process and the documented standard, and their capacity goes toward the work that commands what their time is actually worth. The gap between those two operating realities is structural, and the structure either gets designed or it doesn't. The transition is a documentation project before it's a technology project, even though AI tools usually become part of what gets built. It starts with making the owner's judgment explicit, taking the decision-making that currently lives in their head and extracting it into documented frameworks and decision trees specific enough that something other than the owner can run them. Every call the owner makes has a logic underneath it, whether they've ever articulated it or not. The AI manager work is articulating that logic with enough precision that an AI system or a trained team member can execute it to the same standard. That requires slowing down decisions that currently run automatically and walking through the reasoning until it's visible enough to be transferred out. Once it's transferred, it can scale. Until it is, the owner is the only thing that can run it. The documentation phase typically reveals two categories of judgment the owner had never made explicit. The first is the standard, the quality bar the owner applies to all outgoing work, the specific criteria they use to evaluate whether something is ready to go to a client. The second is the exception framework, how the owner handles situations that don't fit the standard procedure, the edge cases, and unusual requests that currently circle back to them, because there's no other documented answer. Most owners can articulate the standard when asked. The exception framework is what takes time to extract, because it lives in pattern recognition they've built up over years of handling the same edge cases in ways that feel obvious to them and invisible to everyone else. I worked with a life coach in New Jersey who had built a practice she was proud of and still couldn't move her weekly sessions past a certain number. When we mapped her operation, the constraint was the same one I keep finding. The entire client experience ran through her personally, from new inquiry to post-session follow-up. Every part of it competed for the same hours her actual coaching sessions required. Her coaching capacity had a hard ceiling, and the ceiling was the operating model, the one that required her personal involvement across every part of the client experience, including the parts that had nothing to do with why clients were paying her. When we rebuilt the infrastructure, pulled the standards she'd been applying manually and built it into systems that could run without her, her capacity for actual coaching sessions tripled. Clients still got personal, high-quality responses. The experience got more consistent because it was running on a documented standard, something that could hold the quality without her needing to personally hold it. The practice finally had room to use what she was actually worth. The owners who are still running this way tend to realize the competitive gap late, usually after it's already showing in the numbers. Every month, you're still the decision point for everything your team can't move without you is a month that compounds because there are businesses in your market making this shift right now. Their capacity for high-value work is growing while yours is fixed. They can move on opportunity on a Tuesday afternoon because the capacity is there regardless of what the owner's morning looked like. The gap takes a year to show in a revenue report, but it's building in the quality of the work and the consistency of the client experience the whole time. By the time it's obvious, 12 months of compounding have already happened. The owners building this now work just as many hours after the shift as before it. The hours go to different work, toward the consultations that actually deserve their best judgment, toward the relationships that drive the business forward. And that's the whole point. If you want more on what the AI manager shift actually looks like inside a service business, subscribe. This is what the channel covers, and there's a lot more coming. If you want to know specifically where your operation is keeping you in the system and what it would take to change that, the operational snapshot is where that starts. Free, 30 minutes, link below.